Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After running through the news you need to know about, we're going through the fan favorite answer fans questions. Only a few days before the draft. We actually have a surprising lot of news to talk about today, which I didn't expect, but there was a lot of stuff that came out over the week, especially after the GM press conference. So definitely excited to talk about that stuff. The hype of this offseason is real. It's one of the best Dolphins off seasons of all time. And it could even get even better with the draft coming around. So I'm very excited to see what the Dolphins do over the weekend. It's going to be pretty fun, especially with all the Dalvin Cook rumors. I don't know where these Derrick Henry rumors are coming from. You really can't find any substantial stuff of that. And the rumors have gotten to the point where, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but there has been a lot of clickbaity articles and videos on YouTube. It's actually pretty much, it's gotten out of hand. This has to be the most popular Dolphins team in the last 20 years. It has to be. But anyway, let's get into the news you need to know about. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors, and it's regarding the future of the right tackle situation in Miami. Not great news if you're me. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but let's get into this. GM Chris Grier said Wednesday the Dolphins still view the USC product, Austin Jackson, as their starting right tackle. The draft can change team situations, but this follows a report from the Miami Herald's Barry Jackson that indicated the fourth-year blocker indeed remains in play to be the Dolphins' right edge starter. I don't know if you guys watched the Marvin Allen Chris Grier pre-draft press conference. Obviously, that was one. Tua was also there, and Xavier was there as well. But they had a lot of interesting stuff they said in this, and they pretty much said that they're going to give Austin Jackson another shot there. There are things to like about Austin's game. He has been moved around a lot too. He's also had to deal with a lot of different, literally a different blocking scheme and he's going to have a new offensive line coach again this year. So that's going to be, obviously it's not great for his career. So there are things that, and the good thing is this is second year going into the offense. So there is still some optimism. I haven't seen it. I don't think any of us have seen it watching the games on a consistent basis. That's for sure. Hopefully him playing, this is probably the longest he's played tackle since he's been in a Dolphins uniform, and this is definitely the longest he's been in the same offense since he's been in a Dolphins uniform. So hopefully all of those things help. I just haven't been the biggest Austin Jackson fan since he's gotten into the league. He's not the most physical player in the world. He's a great athlete. He's not the greatest run blocker in the world either. He's inconsistent. I mean, the thing is that he struggles, athletically, he can keep up with any pass rusher in the NFL. It's the power stuff that had, the best example for it is when AJ Epinesa with the Bills just bulldozed him and then hit Tua in the ribs. That's like a snapshot of what he has struggled with in his career, which is play strength and just being a physical player. And that's something that if he can just unlock that part of his game, and honestly, that's not the worst thing in the world. At least he's not, he's below average athletically. He doesn't have those issues. So there's still a chance that he can become the player that we thought he could be out of USC. I just hope this isn't a situation where they have blind, where they're looking through and not wanting to give up and not wanting to admit they're wrong type of situation. I hope they actually see a lot of improvement in practice and they're not just lying about that. I don't know why they would do that, but that kind of stuff does worry me a little bit because that draft was a big deal. Tua and Austin Jackson, obviously, those were the first two picks in that draft. Igbenogany, it is what it is. It was a late first round pick. You're not going to hit on every one of them, but I don't know. I just hope that's not a stubbornness issue, and they really do. Because, again, if you guys remember, in the last year's offseason, Mike McDaniel's first offseason as the Dolphins head coach, that was one of the biggest storylines of that training camp was how much improvement Austin Jackson showed. So I'm still holding out hope. I mean, that would be a massive dub if Austin Jackson can get his career together. That would be a huge win for the franchise because they need that position to be solid, and it was definitely not solid last year. And we never really got to see Austin Jackson take it. Maybe he was gonna be that guy. That at least that was the offseason narrative, and hopefully he can do that this year. But again, I'm a little skeptical about it. We haven't seen it yet, whether it was injuries or inconsistent play. And hopefully, and again, this is something Chris brought up in the press conference. I guess ever since he's been around Tehran, he's really shown some leaps in his game. And if that can happen, the Dolphins will have a really good offensive line, because that's really the biggest weakness on the line. Connor Williams played great. Robert Hunt played great. Tehran, when he was in the game, in the lineup, played phenomenal. That other guard spot is going to be like Eichenberg when he was healthy. I don't think he played bad at all. He wasn't terrible. But we'll see what they do with that position. Maybe they take one in the second round. But I don't know. I'm holding out hope for Austin Jackson. But if he can turn it around, it's across the board a pretty good offensive line. And hopefully they can stay healthy. And, another thing that I want to say before we move on from Austin Jackson is it sucks to have 2 injury-prone tackles. So hopefully that's not an issue this year. If, one of them's hard enough to deal with, 2 of them is almost impossible. So that's another thing that they're going to have to think about. But we'll see. I'm still holding out hope for Austin. Again, he has the physical gifts to do it. Maybe he's not the strongest tackle in the world, but you can fix that. So at least it's fixable, the issues that he's had, and we'll see if he can fix them. This is an interesting report. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins taking calls on Cedric Wilson after the Robbie Anderson / Chosen Anderson, in case you don't know who he is, since the signing of Robbie / Chosen Anderson. And then there was a report, and I think it was from Bleacher Report, that said that the Dolphins aren't taking calls anymore for Cedric Wilson. I don't know what's going on with Cedric Wilson anymore. Obviously, if they make a trade that would save some cap space, they could then, it makes a deal for Dalvin Cook even easier if they were able to trade for him, and especially if he hits the open market and free agency, that would be a huge deal. But if they're not doing it anymore, then I don't know. You can't really get a clear message on that. I don't know if we talked about this last week. Some of these weeks are just running together for some reason, but I don't want to repeat myself, and hopefully I haven't already. But this comes from Pro Football Rumors. I think we probably did talk about this last week, but I guess we didn't, did we? Anyway, Tua considered retirement after concussions. I'm not going to talk about this for a long period of time. I will say this, and this is obviously I'm not very educated on the matters of the brain and the biology of a brain as some of these other people are, like doctors, and I do know a lot of history about the NFL though. And when Tua said in his press conference that when his doctors told him that he doesn't really have to worry about CTE, that because he plays quarterback, he isn't getting hit as often as the other players. Well, we know factually, at least that's not true. I mean, there's a lot of former quarterbacks that have CTE. Now, you could argue that it's a different era, and they're definitely taking less hits. But that doesn't mean when you get sacked, you can't hit your head on the ground. And we've seen that from Tua. So I thought, the messaging on the concussions with Tua has been very strange. Because when you hear stuff like that, the doctors told him that, that doesn't make any sense. That just does not make sense. I mean, Jim McMahon's a great example. Joe Namath is a great example. Even some, I can't really think of any modern quarterbacks that have had severe CTE or head injury issues. Obviously, Steve Young and Troy Aikman had concussion issues. So it's not like, and it is a brain injury. I just thought that was just a weird thing to say. When there's evidence of other players having those issues that have played in the modern league and that have played the position that he's played, or not in the modern NFL, I would say from the 90s through, I would say from the 70s through the 90s, there's been evidence of that. I don't think any like modern day, like 2000 up until now, has publicly at least had, issues with that. So maybe he's, I don't know, maybe they're right, but there definitely has been evidence of that from that position. I just thought that was weird. I don't know if anybody else thought that was weird. I thought it was weird. Obviously, he didn't retire. But, in this whole judo thing, I don't know anything about judo, but for the love of God, if it can actually help you fall, I'm just sick and tired of hearing about it, honestly. I hope it can help him fall. I don't want him to be hurt anymore, that's for sure, but, good Lord. It just kind of seems like a joke every time they bring it up, and it's, I don't know, it just gets old. There was something else here. Oh, yeah, see, I should have written this down. Oh, okay, here we go. This was from the press conference, as well. Let's do this first. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Barry Jackson wrote the Dolphins could be eyeing a kicker to serve as competition during OTAs and training camp for Jason Sanders, which I don't think a lot of Dolphins fans have talked about. Maybe they have, but I don't know if that's true. But anyway, that is a big deal that I completely forgot about. Now, the thing about this whole situation, you could pick one in the 6th round, though. I would not use a 3rd round pick on a kicker, but maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if they were sold on one, but this is actually something that I would be in favor for. Jason Sanders missed a lot of, easy kicks last year that he should not have missed, and were big momentum swings in games. So, obviously special teams is an issue. Maybe they do something about that. I could see that. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was with the Marvin Allen, Chris Greer press conference. They were talking about tight ends, and it really, when they were talking. Now, if you guys can go watch it yourselves. I don't got the exact quote, but when they were talking about tight ends, they definitely. They were interested in tight ends, and they were talking about how deep the draft is. It just kind of all signs point to probably going to take a tight end, which gets me excited. And they obviously talked about trading up in the 1st round, how they've gotten calls about it. And I know that, Armando Salguero wrote about this too, where he was saying that it would be difficult to get a deal done. That's not true. You could easily trade up back into the 1st round with somebody. You would have to probably give up future capital. But if it's a player that you really want, then I wouldn't have any issues with the Dolphins doing it. But it gets me excited because if the Dolphins, it seems that they're really interested in a tight end, and there's a lot of really fun tight ends in this draft that I like a lot, and I think a lot of Dolphins fans like, and obviously people keep talking about it and talking about how this is a deep, deep tight end draft, and that's true. But there's some specific ones that I think would be awesome just to put in that offense, and I think it would help out the run game a lot as well with some of these prospects who are really good run blockers and fit this scheme. It just adds another weapon to the offense, which I do think they need a tight end presence in this offense. And they could get not only are some of these guys good players, but these are game-changing type of tight ends that have potential to be Pro Bowl caliber players. So I really hope it's not a defensive tackle. I've seen some mock drafts have us taking defensive tackle. I've seen a lot of different ones. Obviously, the Hendon Hooker one, I love Hendon Hooker. He's a very good player, but that doesn't help the team at all. So, if they didn't sign Mike White, then I would be in on it. But there's that's too many resources at that position. But yeah, it seems that all signs are pointing to a tight end, and if they do go out and get a kicker to give Jason Sanders competition, I think that would be a very good move if they can do that later in the draft. But it's not something I didn't think about. When I read that today, I was like, Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's definitely a need. All right, moving on from that, I think that's all the news we can talk about. There hasn't been any, just to clarify this, there hasn't been any new news on Dalvin Cook. There hasn't been any news on Derrick Henry. In case you guys are interested in that, I've been checking like probably every 5 hours of each day. There hasn't been any news on that. So if I had to give my opinion on this, I don't think. I mean, it's possible that you'll see a draft day trade similar to what the Niners did with Trent Williams. Like you could see that, and even AJ Brown's another good example of that. You could totally, and especially I mean, there. You know what? Now that I think about it, there is a good chance that can happen, because then the board will fall. They'll have a more of an understanding of what the board looks like. It could definitely even happen after the first day of the draft is over. You could see that in the next morning. So you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, but which is awesome. The weird thing is, it's weird that Chris Kerr kind of hyped everything out. Like, there's so many doors the Dolphins could go through, that it does get you excited for the draft. But I think the smartest situation would be to wait till after the draft to trade for him. It might take it. It's probably going to take a 2. You know, for McCaffrey, it was a 2. So maybe they value him a little bit less than that. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It definitely gets you excited for the draft. But there's no new news on it. There's no new news on a Derrick Henry trade either. So these are. There is no fan Q&A today. I forgot to upload the fan Q&A thing. So we're just gonna go straight into this. So these are my 5 favorite players that the Dolphins could draft. And I hope that they get one of these guys. I would love to share some of my mock draft, because I do a mock draft that I don't share, but I try to see how many I can guess right. And I was looking through them today, and I was like, Jesus Lord in heaven. One of the more famous ones is, or not more famous, like I'm a famous person, but the ones that I think about a lot is like the Chris Harris draft is one that I look at and I'm like, good God, dude. I really wanted TJ Watt that year. And I remember even people like Omar Kelly talking about how he's too small or whatever the heck he was talking about. But TJ Watt was amazing out of Wisconsin that season. Ryan Shazier is another one that I really wanted. But going back and looking at some of the drafts, it's fun to look at what you wanted the Dolphins to pick. Maybe one day I'll go through some of those mock drafts on the channel. I think that could be fun. But anyway, these are the 5 favorite guys that I hope that this is what I hope they do with the second round pick. And these are in order. So the number one, and I think this would be personally my favorite. Now listen, this does not in any way help as much as a tight end would. And I'm going to be honest with you. But Jahmyr Gibbs is I think the best, in my opinion, would be my favorite one. If I was the GM, I would definitely take a tight end over a running back. But in terms of like players that I like watching, and it would be exciting to see him in a Dolphins uniform, Jahmyr Gibbs is number 1. What he would bring to the team is a dual threat. Could be a phenomenal receiving back and a great running back, and it fits the scheme. And could really give the Dolphins a third option in the passing game, a third consistent option, which a lot of these guys could do. Number 2, I have Osiris Torrance. Now, he probably will be a first-round pick, but I just put him on here because he's one of my favorite players. And maybe he falls to the second round. He is a guard, but he is, according to a lot of people, the top guard prospect in the draft. But I feel like this would really help solidify the offensive line. He's a phenomenal pass protector. He's from the Gators, so a bit of Mike Pouncey connections there, which I think is cool, even though it doesn't mean anything. But this would be a great pick for the Dolphins. I think this would help in every area. Now, this is like the least realistic one. I didn't realize he was so highly thought of. I was like, oh, this guy's probably going to go in the first round. You're probably not going to make it out. But maybe this is a trade-up candidate for the Dolphins. But yeah, phenomenal guard, and I think would really help out the offensive line, and protect Tua for years to come. And one thing I will add before we move on for Torrance, the Saints always talked about, and Sean Payton and players who played there talked about how important the interior offensive line was for Drew Brees so that he could see passing lanes easier and that they weren't necessarily worried about tackles all the time. I thought that was interesting for Tua, who isn't the biggest guy in the world. Tua's not that short. He's actually pretty tall. But he's not, like, people act like he's like 6'2", I think, or 6'1". He's not the shortest, but he's definitely bigger than Drew Brees it was. But it's something to think about. I think it could help in a lot of different ways. And establishing a line of scrimmage and a consistent one. And I don't think, and Torrance is a guy who's not going to miss a lot of games in his career. I don't think he ever missed a snap in college. He didn't give up a sack throughout his entire career at Florida. And he played against players like Jalen Carter. Which is extremely impressive. So that's number 2. So Jahmyr Gibbs 1. Osiris Torrance, I think, is 2. Number 3. This was hard because it's hard to pick a tight end. Now, in my opinion, the best tight end of the draft is Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. I think he's the best player at that position in the draft. I know a lot of people like Mike Meyer. He just doesn't separate enough for me, and I'm like, I don't want Mike Gesicki all over again, even though Meyer is definitely more. He's also not that great after the catch, if I'm being real. So I just was like, I wasn't a huge fan of Mike, but Laporta and Washington, it really came down to those two. And I would say Sam Laporta is the better option here. Obviously, comes from Iowa, more of a pro-style offense, very physical offense. So he's run block before, and he's a phenomenal receiver. Like, he's great after the catch. He's separates on a consistent basis. He's very smooth. He's just a natural tight end, natural receiving tight end who can run block. And there's obviously a little bit of George Kittle. And a lot of great tight ends have come out of Iowa, but what George Kittle did in the Niners offense, maybe they can kind of recreate that with Sam Laporta, who honestly, before the draft even started, was my favorite tight end before I started really looking into it. Kincaid, I just thought. Now, Laporta, the thing that he's got over those guys, a lot of the people in this draft, is he's done it for a few years now. So I think he's done the last 2 years. He's had really good numbers. So I really like Laporta. So he would be my 3. 4, I have Darnell Washington out of Georgia. The only reason I don't have him higher is because his receiving ability I have questions about. He really reminded me of Mercedes Lewis when I was watching him. The best thing that I think he would give the Dolphins is a really good blocker and a physical presence in the run game that they desperately needed, especially last year. It was they weren't physical enough on offense. And Darnell Washington could definitely bring that to the Dolphins, and he has a ton of upside. He's more of a prospect, which isn't the greatest thing in the second round, especially when someone like Laporta is definitely someone who can come in right away and produce at a high level. Darnell probably won't do that. He doesn't separate when he's running his routes as much as the other guys do. But, he ran a very fast 40. But I worry about his receiving skills, so that's why I have him a little bit lower than Laporta. And but man, he could really help out in the running game. Like, he really, really could. And then dead last at 5, I have Dalvin Cook. Now, obviously, Dalvin Cook isn't a prospect, but it would be a great trade for him. He's a phenomenal player. And I don't know why I'm saying so much, but it reminds me of, it doesn't matter. But what I've lost my train of thought. Dalvin Cook would be great. It would be a great trade. You would have to take on some money. He wouldn't be cheap, but he would be a game changer and a great third option for the Miami Dolphins on their offense. It would be very, very explosive. I just like the other 4 players better. And now that I'm sitting here thinking about it and talking about it, I might put Laporta 1. But just to recap the list, I have, because Laporta fits a huge need and he's a great player. So I actually might I might put Laporta 1 just because of that. I love Laporta. But and here, my list as follows: Jahmyr Gibbs 1, 2 Osiris Torrance, 3 Laporta, 4 Darnell Washington, and 5 Dalvin Cook. Those would be my 5 favorite things the Dolphins could do on draft day. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, let me know what you guys would do. Who are your favorite players in the draft? If I had to pick a 5, I really can't think of one right now. I don't know why everybody wants a defensive tackle. The TCU, not the TCU. It's not TCU. I think it's Kansas State. Or maybe it's not North Dakota. His name's Spencer. He's a tackle. I wouldn't mind that, but I doubt the Dolphins are going to do that in the second round. I can't remember his name right now, but he didn't make the list. He's not as exciting as the other 5. Anyway, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys would do with the pick down below in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys. I hate saying that. I hate when people say that, but I'll see you guys in the next one.